Wow, new bombshell report from CNN, guys. Drumpf is really finished this time. It's all over for Ronald Blumpf. Former U.S. President Donald Trump has been caught on tape on a hot mic. Well, it wasn't a hot mic, it was a hidden recording, saying the unspeakable, the unthinkable. He allegedly shared classified documents after he was president, and he admitted as much on tape. Now, there are problems with this tape. One, which I saw pointed out by Elon Musk, but first I guess I'll go over a summary of what he said in case you haven't heard it. Basically, Trump is talking to people about how, hey, folks think that I tried to start a war with Iran. I couldn't be further from the truth. It was Mark Milley and the military who tried to start a war with Iran. I stopped them. And look, I have the documents to prove it, and I have this stack of papers here. And he you can hear him rustling the papers. He just holds it and he says, "Now I can't share these, unfortunately, because they're classified. I could have declassified them when I was president, but I didn't." And so he's talking about how he can't share these documents because they're classified. And so, since this is audio only, not video, the accusation is that in the scene which we can't watch, Trump actually held up the document and he showed them to these people, and he showed the classified documents to people who weren't supposed to see them, and therefore, and he admitted on the same tape that these documents were classified and he wasn't allowed to share them with anybody, yet he did anyway. And so therefore, he must rot in prison for the rest of his life, and he cannot stand for the election in 2024. This is what we are led to believe. But Elon Musk pointed out a potential flaw, an example of plausible deniability on Trump's part. He said, "I've got this stack of papers here." He didn't say that those papers were themselves classified. He was talking about the information was classified, but those papers could have been anything. It could have been a stack of blank papers. It could have been it could have been a stack of newspapers. We don't know because we weren't there. And even assuming that these were the so-called classified documents, it doesn't sound like he actually showed them to these people. It sounds like, maybe he grabbed them and rustled them a little bit. But he specifically said, I can't show anyone because they're classified and I didn't declassify them. So if he's saying that, I don't think he's saying that and then letting them read it. It doesn't sound like he did. At least not during this recording. If you want to, if someone wants to accuse him of showing them classified documents after he was president that he did not declassify, off camera and not, recorded by audio, well, that's a totally separate matter. Then this recording would not be relevant to that. The recording is only relevant to the events that it recorded. And from what we heard, it can go either way. It's really just left up to what you want to assume, and that's not really how the law works. Now, it does work that way in federal court, because judges always just assume that the defendant is in the wrong, and the defendant usually, even though we're told this is the opposite, the defendant usually has to prove themselves innocent beyond a reasonable doubt. And it's the same way with jury trials most of the time. So at the end of the day, do I think this changes anything? Maybe. I know that's a real definitive answer. I'm going right down the middle and saying maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But I think that when it comes to this trial, it depends on the jury. It doesn't really depend on the evidence. People are going to get into that jury room or get into that courtroom, and they're going to be selected on the jury. And by the time that they sit down, they're already going to have their opinion on Donald Trump and whether or not they want to send him to prison. And that's the question. Do you want to send Trump to prison for the rest of his life? Or do you want him to be able to be president again? That's the only question that is going to be facing these jurors. And so Trump just has to hope that there is at least one, and usually if it's only one, they're going to fold. There's too much pressure. But he's got to hope that there's at least one person who really doesn't want to send him to prison and who will hold out. Because there's not going to be, I highly doubt that there's going to be unanimous acquittal. It's going to be, if he's going to get off, it's going to be a hung jury. That's just the way I see it. It's way too polarizing. People aren't going to be able to agree, okay, yeah, Trump's innocent. But I don't think they're going to be able to agree that Trump's guilty either. Not in the Southern District of Florida. Not in a Miami courtroom. I highly doubt that. Sure, they could draw a majority Democrat and, anti-Trump jury. That's perfectly possible. They could draw a majority of people. They could draw, they could draw 10. Although I guess that wouldn't really be correct unless you're counting the alternates. Or wait, is it not including the alternates? Is it? I forget how juries work because it varies too. I think federal courts sometimes have different numbers of juries or different numbers of jurors. I'm kind of out of it today, so I'm not going to be good with numbers. Anyway, he could draw quite a few Democratic jurors, but as long as there's, I think at least 3 or 4. I mean, if there's 4, he's fine. If there's 4 Trump supporters on that jury, he's not going anywhere. And I believe this trial in the Southern District of Florida is going to be a jury trial. If it's a bench trial, then, considering it's a Trump appointee, well, no, I can't imagine them doing that. I don't think that the prosecutors would want that because they would then they would say, oh, it's rigged from the beginning because, it's a Trump juror letting Trump off, or Trump judge letting Trump off. Now, up in New York, the state trial, 99% certain that's going to be a jury trial, and they will convict because, there's a 99.9% chance that they draw a 100% Trump-hating jury because that's in Manhattan. You don't have Trump supporters in Manhattan outside of, Trump himself in Trump Tower. Pretty sure he's the only person in Manhattan who voted for him. If the trial was being held in Staten Island, maybe he'd have a little bit of a shot, but no, not in Manhattan. But it looks like this trial, actually, no, I guess we don't know for sure, but as of right now, this trial is going to be the earliest one. It's going to be like, August 17th it was supposed to start. I think they'll probably delay that because, as it stands, Trump will miss the first debate because he'll probably still be in trial. So I think they'll probably push back the trial at least to September. But I would imagine, I don't know. One of the two sides probably has a reason to want to push it back further and further. So we'll see how far the trial gets pushed back. Then again, it might be in Trump's interest to get this one out of the way so he can focus on the other ones. I think that this is going to be, the Florida trial is going to be his easiest one to get off on. And I think that I think there's a good chance that he gets away without any convictions. But it is tough to say that when there are, I think, 35 charges. And it was interesting how similar the number was. They were both absurdly high in New York and Florida, the federal and the state charges. It was like 38 charges in New York and I think 35 or something in Florida. And remember, it's a federal prosecutor, not a state prosecutor. The same prosecutor who locked up John Edwards, from what I recall. So this guy has a history of imprisoning presidential candidates. So we shall see where things go from here. With that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.